All right,
Alrighty.
Mr. Edmondson.
Yes, sir. It's just a little cherry box that I turned. I've been trying to play around more and more with textures and doing some different colorations and whatnot. And I find it a lot easier for me to kind of visualize and see how things are going to work out if I actually just turn a quick little piece and then do some coloration or texturing or whatever it is I want to experiment with. So this was just really an experimentation with using India ink, which was on the inside of this box, which I liked a lot. And then a dry brush technique of blue over texturing on the outside of it. So it's just kind of an experimental piece, really.
The blueberry.
How big is it?
It's about 3 inches high and 2 inches wide, maybe an inch and a half, 2 inches wide.
How did you do the texturing, Bob?
Actually, the texturing is just one of those Cutzel balls, and I used my micro tool and just started making little divots. Actually, there's some more. The smaller ones is a different bit. I can't remember what it's called, but you can almost see inside the smaller little divots there. It's almost a raised piece in the center of it. It makes kind of an interesting little texture.
Mhm. And then is that a die on the outside, did you say?
No, it's a whole series of blues. Hang on here a second. I don't know whether you can see it. No, you can't see it. I started with, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 different colors of blue and some whites and things like that. You start with the darkest color and you just start doing dry brushing on it and you just keep going and going. It's probably got maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 coats on it.
Hold up what were you going to show, Bob? I stopped sharing real quick.
It's I don't know whether you can see it. That's just the palette. I use a little paper plate and I just kind of going around this way, starting with the darkest color and just working my way around.
Uh-huh.
So
cool.
Yeah, I like the finish. It's a kind of a matted or dull finish like on it, and the depth with the different colors. It looks great.
I noticed when I was staring at the photo that the indentations don't line up. You must have done it when the box was closed. Did you just have a hell of a time finding that point again?
no, I actually, because this was just a piece I was playing around with, I actually had the top and the base separate when I did it. So Norm, I also spent hours doing it, trying to get things to match up because I forgot I had done it that way.
Did you have to work at keeping the pattern random?
Well, you have to be cognizant of it. It's not very difficult to do. I did the larger dimples first, and then took that smaller bit, and then just kind of went in between places, and it's just it's just random, and I don't find it difficult to get a random pattern. I think some people see that they start getting rows and circles and things like that, but I don't know. I guess my brain works in random ways. So
Did you seal the cherry before you put the India ink in? And do you have problems with it running?
I did seal it. I just used a combination of alcohol and shellac.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Bob, this one's also yours.
just a little cherry platter, and this was more an exercise in trying to work with ebonized texturing and ebonizing, and that's what that on the outer side, the dark pieces are. It's was carved and then textured and then I use an ebonizing solution, which was just basically that apple cider and steel wool, left for about 3 or 4 days, and then you just filter it.
Very nice design. Like that.
Yeah, that I actually made a little template out of plastic, and I could just lay it on there and move it. I put some lines on there beforehand, but it just made it easier to follow it. But
How did you get the ebonizing solution to stay within the lines?
it's tough. I bought some, and again, I don't think you can see it, but I've bought some tape that's supposed to be, you're supposed to be able to put it along the line, and it keeps liquids from going underneath it, and it's.
But the frog tape?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think frog tape claimed.
I had problems with frog tape because I was concerned about the finish, which I shouldn't have done on the actual cherry before I did it, because I was trying to keep that somewhat protected, so if I got anything on it, I could sand it off easier. But this tape works well, except it doesn't form on curves or anything very well. It's got a stiffness to it that I didn't care for, so I gotta find some other way to do it.
Hot glue might do it.
Sorry,
Hot glue.
hot glue. That may do it. I actually had a frisk that I tried on another piece of this cherry that I had, and the problem is that it left a residue or something. I just couldn't get the stuff off.
Right. I'm a
There's
fan of.
another kind of tape you may not have heard of, but the guys that do pinstriping on cars, they
Yeah.
have a tape that's supposed to be wonderful for it.
Yeah, I did find it. This I can't see. There's no name on here.
Yeah, I've also used gaffer's tape at times. Sometimes that's pretty amazing tape too. So
Yeah.
So that ebonizing though worked on that cherry wood. I didn't know that it worked on cherry like that. That really darkened it really well.
Oh yeah, I tried it on different kinds of woods, and depending on what wood you're using, you get a different color. It's always kind of a chocolate brown or a dark brown, but it really makes kind of an interesting and nice, and it's very matte. It's a kind of really matte finish to it if you don't put any oil on. This has been oiled with Danish oil over the top of it, but
Can you zoom in on that texture for a minute?
I can.
Great, thanks.
So Bob, it's just you said apple cider and steel wool. Is that what?
yeah, you just put apple cider in a mason jar, and no, not apples, apple cider vinegar.
Apple cider. Okay, that's what. Okay.
And then I just used 4/0 steel wool, left it for I think it was 3 or 4 days, and then I just strained it with a paint strainer that's got a real fine mesh in it. And I've still got the solution sitting there. I've had it for a couple of months, and it works every time I put it on there. So it goes a long way, believe me.
Don't drink it.
Looks fantastic.
That is great. It's the finish on the rest of it's just exceptional. I mean, is there a finish on there? I can't remember what
it's all Danish oil. I've really never finished one in all Danish oil, and this one I've got about 6 coats of Danish oil on it.
Nice. That's very nice.
Would rubber cement help you stay within those lines? Does that ever work?
Rubber cement?
Mm-hmm.
It may. That's kind of like a frisk. I don't know how easily it would come off. I'm always concerned about whether it's going to stain the wood. That's what I have to kind of experiment with a little bit.
I know the trick of using hot melt glue and then just spraying denatured alcohol on it to release it is works really well. And again, I did it on that Burl piece that I did, and I didn't see any effect from that DNA on the Burl. It didn't discolor at all, and the hot melt glue just came right off. So it may be something you can.
How easy is it to control that hot melt glue?
Well, it depends how steady your hand is. How much did
Not
you
as
drink?
easy as the gouge.
Yeah, how much did you drink the night before? So
Yeah.
that's nice, Bob. I mean, every month you come through some other interesting effect, and every month you say, I'm just trying stuff out, but they sure look like finished pieces to me. So,
Well, it's, you can see my shop. I got more experiments that didn't go well.
yeah. All right, Craig. Yeah, Craig, are you on mute?
He's muted. I muted him a while ago.
Boy, that's nice.
Unmute my video. How's that? That's better.
Yep, you're there.
That's great.
Okay, this is a walnut wall sculpture with a copper background. This walnut actually came out of Oregon. We picked it up a couple years ago. So it definitely different, probably a more richer wood than what you would find on the East Coast walnut trees. Just try to do something a little bit different with this one. Tried a really large circle intersecting, see where it comes down across near the bottom. You know, little strands of that one ring. Just another idea playing with it.
Right.
This piece is 22 wide and 33 tall.
Is that the wood or the whole thing, Craig?
The whole thing.
So when
And,
you say, where's the copper? When you said,
the background,
oh, okay, got it.
Beautiful wood, beautiful finish.
So what's the texture on the copper? I didn't even realize that was copper. So it almost looks like canvas.
well, it kind of is. It's textured wallpaper.
Okay.
So the metal comes in a powdered form, and it's mixed with a polyester resin, so I can spray it on or brush it if I want to. So it's a very thin layer of metal.
Wow. What a great technique.
You can get copper, bronze, brass, aluminum, pewter, iron. I can't remember what else they carry. It's a company out of Baltimore that sells it, but it's what they call a cold metal spray. And the company out of Baltimore is called Plate All.
Ted, that may be a good thing to put on our resources page. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a large
Yeah.
chunk of wood to turn on your lathe. Did you turn it outboard, or you have a big lathe and you turned it inboard over the tool rest?
It's inboard. I modified my lathe. So there's a 24-inch section where there is no bed in the lathe. And the rest of the bed is on the floor. So I have an 82-inch faceplate on the lathe.
He has a motorized house.
Well,
Yeah, the wood stands still, the house spins.
Yes, yeah.
when it turns it on, all our lights dim. So
Yeah.
that's,
Hey,
I-
Craig, if you want to
neighborhood.
send me the link, you can just send it to the email that's on our website there. I'll add that to our vendor list.
Okay.
no, that's acceptable. I mean, it just every time you're showing Craig, it's just like it's that. How did you do that?
Yeah.
So, what finish is? Is that a sprayed on finish on the walnut?
No, that is 6 coats of water locks.
Okay. Very nice.
Thank you.
This is Craig as well.
All right. After the demo 2 months ago for the Burl dishes, I dug this one out of my archives. This is an Australian Burl dish that I did back in 2008. So just throw something out there, try and inspire somebody, I guess.
Well, That's nice. Does it sit flat? I mean,
No. When I was doing all my Burl dish series, I turned them all with round bottoms. So they just find their own natural balancing point.
right.
I just felt like that helped with the, the organic feel of the natural edge rim and everything, just to have them be able to rock on a table or something like that.
And is that an oil finish on that, or is that the
No.
same water locks, or is that?
That one I actually lacquered, and I really don't like the fact that I lacquered it because it's too shiny.
Right.
And that's one of the few that I actually still have left. So I may just strip the lacquer off and oil it.
That's nice.
Thank you.
Nice.
I like the splash look, it looks like the way it's curved off there, like it's a splash coming out of the bowl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a interesting shaped burl. I actually have a few other burls that I collected after I did this one. I just never turned anymore. So I have some that are large enough to possibly do 3 bowls out of. But the wood doesn't go bad, so eventually maybe I'll get around to it. Who knows?
Yeah. All right, nicely done.
Thank you.
All right, Gene.
Yeah, I just got to playing around with trying to make a couple of small jars, and I guess I kind of got carried away.
I know the dimensions are on the text, but since we don't have it on the screen, you want to just give some idea of sizes and woods?
Well, the black one in the top right corner is a piece of Spectrafly, and it's about 1 1/4 inches in diameter and 2 3/4 inches tall. I'm not sure about the dimensions on the others.
Right.
Is that one in the front? Is that like a salt box?
No, it's the top is just a piece of burl that I had laying around, and I don't even know what the bottom is.
No, Gene, you answered wrong. It's a salt box. If you buy it, you put what you want in it.
The tall one in the back is a piece of cedar. The one on the left end, back row, is another piece of cedar. And I'm not sure what the other two are.
All right.
It was fun playing with those. That's out of a large burl that I had. And the bottom is thicker and heavier than I wanted it to be, but it was deep enough that I was having trouble getting my tools down into the bottom without the handle of the tool hitting the rim. So I finally gave up on trying to take the bottom any deeper.
Yeah. Do you have a what I call a bottom feeder bowl gouge? Because that would solve that problem. It's got a conventional grind on the end of it, and it allows you don't need to swing it off to the side. You can it's a bottom feeder is what I hear most people calling it, and but it solves that problem of trying to of hitting the sides as you go across the bottom.
No wings and a 30 to 40 degree.
Yep. Yeah, it's just yeah, you don't use any kind of jig to sharpen. I just put mine and I sharpen it like I sharpen a spindle roughing gouge. I just stick it in the V on the V block and just rotate it it's about 30 or 40 degrees. I can't remember, but it'll cut when nothing else will. So it's
not good for anything else, but
Nope.
you get an extra bowl gouge.
I would have used my Raycon set of
Carbide.
They got really long reach on them.
Yep.
So what's the dimension on this piece? And it looks like pretty thick wall thickness.
It is a thick wall thickness. I wanted to make it thick to maintain the natural edge rim. And if I remember correctly, it's about 8.5 inches in diameter and a little over 5 inches tall.
Okay. Yeah, it's always a quandary with burls. Do you leave all that texture on the top and make it thick, or do you make them thinner and make them more delicate? And again, that's Turner's choice on there. It's hard, but I mean, I think for me personally, I probably would have made it a little more tapered on the sides, so the bottom was a little smaller. I just so there's more taper in that area there in the bottom. But again, that's just up to personal preference and what you're trying to do. So
that wood was really hard.
Yep. Burl will be like that. All right, nicely done.
But burls get harder with age to turn.
Say that again.
Burls get harder as they age when you turn them. So if you have one that you picked like 5 years ago, and you have it sitting around, and you try to turn it, is it going to be more difficult than, let's say, one we just picked up a few weeks ago?
Well, I think burls, like any wood, will turn better when they're green, and they do get harder with it. My experience is that again they react just like regular wood. I mean, but a dried piece of wood is going to turn more difficult than if you're trying to remove large quantities, particularly. It's just more difficult to turn when dry. It becomes more brittle. So, all right, John, Dave.
Yeah. So this is a piece. Our neighbor had a dead Yoshino cherry tree cut down, and I went over and grabbed a chunk of the trunk. And there's actually 3 trunks kind of growing together, and it was just a big confusing piece of wood. So I figured, well, I'll cut a piece of it off because I bet it's really interesting inside, and I wanted to do a natural edge. But this project really beat me up. And the reason is that's 12 inches high, and my tools, my hollowing tools are 5/8 inch tools, and they're really not designed to go that deep. They'll go maybe 8 inches. They won't go 12 inches. And so getting down to the bottom of that thing was really a challenge. And it's in the end, I kind of consider it a fail. The waist is too thin, the bottom is too thick. But when I put it on a high shelf, my wife likes it, and nobody gets to see the defects inside. But I thought it was a really cool piece of wood, and I love the bark inclusion in there.
Yeah, no, it's a striking piece of wood. I have to tell you, John, one of the things when I was going through the gallery this morning, the clarity of this photograph is just, to me, just exceptional. I mean, I love the piece of wood, but the crispness of the details in this, the way the photograph brings it out is just exceptional to me, and I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. It helps to have a $2,000 lens.
Yeah. Because I guess I noticed that because I struggle with it. So no, that's very nice.
Just need to get a $2,000 lens. That's all, Steve.
That's why I hire somebody.
It was a fun piece to work on, and basically in the end it convinced me, I need to buy the 3/4 inch hollowing tools instead of just the 5/8. So I get a new tool out of it.
Yeah, are you using the Trent Bosch system?
Yeah.
Do you have the stabilizer? Or you're just holding it freehand?
No, I do have the stabilizer, but I also have the Raleigh Monroe, hollowing tool, and it'll extend that far. It's just, again, it's a 5/8 inch tool, and it just bounces around like
shatter tool at that point.
Yeah. So, hopefully I can go that deep in the future if I get the bigger tools.
Having that hole in the piece doesn't help much either.
No.
Yeah, and that works against you a couple ways, because when you have the hole in it, then you can see the variations in the wall thickness. So,
Beautiful grain though. I love it.
That is.
Yeah,
So
it was a pretty piece of wood.
Did you turn that green?
Yes.
And did you then finish it? Did you just turn it once?
I just turned it once, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then
Right.
it's just finished with pre-cat lacquer. And yeah, I mean it's okay, but like I said, if I had to put it on a low shelf, I probably wouldn't keep it. I'd throw it in the burn pile, but keep it on a high shelf. My wife liked it, so
Yeah, flawless.
just put it up high.
That's nice.
Thank you.
All right, John.
Yeah, another big attempt. I had a log sitting outside, and I thought, I want to make a really tall bud vase, and so that's 18 inches high, and it's about 7 inches at its widest point. And another pretty good challenge. It's actually not finished. I just put a coat of shellac on it, so I will, and it was turned green. And once it's fully dry, I'll probably put a different finish on it. But I thought it came out kind of cool. And again, it was a challenge. The base is not fully hollowed. I mean, you can, if it was a longer piece, I probably could have, cut off or hollowed out the base and then glued a piece back on, but I thought, well, that's more trouble than it's worth. So basically I formed it on the lathe, then I drilled down through the neck with a long drill bit. And then I took a 2.5 inch Forstner bit and drilled from the base up to where that small bit intersected. And so basically, because this was a pith included project, and I wanted to get that pith out of there so it wasn't going to crack all over the place. And actually it worked pretty well. I haven't had any severe cracking as a result.
Did you plug it?
I have not plugged it yet, no. I may after it's fully dry. It's still pretty wet. The thing weighs a ton.
What kind of wood is it?
It's maple.
Maple. What?
Yep, it's a spalted maple. It's been it was from our backyard. It's been sitting there for a while, and I needed a big enough piece to do the size that I wanted, but I didn't have a big enough log where I could, cut the log in half and then not have to deal with a pith. So This was pith included, and actually it came out okay.
That's it. It's a nice shape, nice form.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. This is Mark Banka.
Hi guys. So this is a piece of West Coast maple that I got from Mike Smith a couple years ago. It's just basically a simple OG platter. Obviously the wood does a lot of speaking for this piece. So my artistic sense was to make it simple, make it get the proportions and get some nice balance on it, and then mostly just stay out of the way of it. Let the wood do what it's going to do. Yeah, really pretty piece of wood.
That's gorgeous.
And it's yeah, thanks. And I started finishing this. I got some finishes from Wood Doctor, and so this is a walnut oil Carnauba wax mix. And you put it on, when the piece is ready for finishing on the lathe still. Take the stuff and rub it down really good, get some of the oil soaked into it, and then turn the lathe on and press the rag into it really hard, and it heats up the Carnauba wax and kind of solidifies that and sets the walnut oil into it really nicely. Yeah, I love the colors. It really pops the contrast really nicely, and of course I like the wax finish. I like that luster instead of a hard shine. So anyway,
That's a striking
That's
piece
it.
of wood. There really is an amazing piece of wood.
yeah, you never know when you pick it up in the blank. It looks like maybe it's interesting, but until you start cutting away at it and kind of seeing those burl areas in there. And I did my best to try to photograph a little bit of the chatoyance, but that's really hard. I haven't been able to quite figure out how to do that. But anyway.
I like the rim treatment as well.
Thank
you. What part of the rim treatment? So on the rim's not flat. I mean, it's sloping inward, but it also has some curve to it. And then just below the rim, it is undercut slightly. And I think that works well, like for photographing. Well, and just the visual, you get a shadow line underneath that, and so it sets the rim apart from the bowl.
You can see the chatoyance on the left side of the bowl and the previous image. I think some of that comes through in the photograph.
It's really hard to hear you, Joe, when you're speaking. I'm not sure whether there's something wrong with your microphone or.
I'm going to back off a little bit from the microphone, Joe. I think you're just too close.
Too close or too far?
Too close.
Too close. You're blowing it out.
Too close. You're overdriving it.
Try it now.
What's this? Still too loud?
Time for a new mic.
More.
Or maybe turn down your mic settings on your sound settings. But yeah, you're kind of. It seems like you're overdriving it.
Yeah, that too.
What I was saying, yeah, I can see it's. I'll just shut up for the rest of the meeting.
No need. We just
No.
No, we like your input. It's just if there was something you could do, we just want to let you know.
Try your system
I'll
set.
play along with the settings.
Yeah.
I know you were speaking about the chatoyance over on that left side there. And I think the thing about photographing it is, you can't really fully appreciate the chatoyance unless you can actually move the piece in your hand, and get the light to come across it differently. That's when you see the depth to it.
Yeah, they need a hologram.
Hey, Mark, someone
Exactly.
asked in the chat what the finish was again. They missed what you said.
Okay, so it's a friction finish. I guess is the description of these from the Wood Doctor, and it is his walnut oil Carnauba wax finish. It just in the same bottle as like the Mahoney's walnut oil, and on the lathe, wet the piece down thoroughly with it, and then turn the lathe on, and then at speed, push the rag into it, push your polishing cloth into it with the, and it sets the oil in, and then hardens the Carnauba wax across the top of it. So it's wonderful stuff. Again, it's Wood Doctor.
Yeah, I use that a lot, and I get really nice finishes from it.
Well, that's nice.
Looks like you have a little bit of a foot on the bottom of it. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't include that photograph.
Okay.
I just wanted to have two, but yeah, all my pieces have a proper foot. Yeah. Well, no, that's not true. I mean, the platters like this do. I do some with a round bottom too, but not anything like this.
Nicely done. Nicely executed in that piece of wood.
Thank you. And so this is some side of the road oak. I can see the tree that it came from. This is white oak, and this is as far as natural edge bowls. I think for me, it's large. It's 11 by 10. I forget if it's 11 across and 10 high. But so it's limbwood, big limbs. Okay, so there you can see kind of the side of it. Yeah. And, so when I found the stuff by the side of the road, one of the things that really interested me in that was this whole limbwood thing was that the pith wasn't anywhere near the center on it. The pith was 85% to one side. So I thought, aha, so I can take this and I can cut it off at the pith, so I'm not having to deal with that cracking, and that would give me more swoop and something that's taller than most of the natural edge bowls I do. So anyway, so that was my idea with it. There was, a spot that showed, I assumed it was ant activity had gotten into this tree. So on the blank, I kind of said, yeah, this is just a little hole that's it'll just turn right out. But as you can see here, it as I turned into it, I realized that it was just going to go completely through, right near the foot. And in fact, this cavity goes in one side, out the other side, and it goes through to the foot and to the inside. So, so supporting the bottom of this when I was finishing the turning was, a little bit dicey. I was being as careful as I could and monitoring to see if I had good wood support, and I did. And obviously it came out without flying off the lathe. So I was tickled with that. This white oak is, man, that stuff is just tough as nails to work with. It's hard, it's heavy, and it's quite abrasive on the tools. So I was real familiar with my sharpening setup because like trying to get nice clean cuts on the outside, I would sharpen the tool, sharpen my gouge. I'm using a 5/8 gouge with a 40-40-ish grind on it. And I would start when it's doing like closing in on the shape cuts. I would start just below where the barb started and go upward. Go to the top and then start my cut at the bottom and get to where I started with, and then have to go sharpen the gouge again. Because in that one full sweep of this thing, it just takes that tool and turns it into a butter knife. So I lost some length on my gouges, but that's okay. I was able to keep all the bark, and so it was turned green, one pass, and it's just finished with walnut oil.
It's a beautiful piece. You and Stephen Mall are welcome to all the white oak in North Carolina, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Well,
The,
I love how it looks, but yeah, it's tough on the tools. It's hard to work.
The symmetry of this view of that front, the sapwood and the heartwood, is the way you've maintained that is really exceptional. I mean, it just if that wasn't so well balanced, it would not. You'd lose a lot of the effects. So it was either a really good photograph or really nicely turned. But I love the balance of that piece, the way that view right there. That's nicely done.
I think the visible,
Say it again, Bob.
You muted yourself halfway through, Bob.
the visible growth lines are really wonderful. It adds a dimension to it.
I like the shape of the base too. It's just so nice and gentle and organic. It's really nice shape. I like that.
Well, thank you. I've been working on my shapes, and if you notice the line on the the general curve of the piece following the outside line, try to make sure they have a nice curve going from the top, one edge, and comes all the way around and misses the table. So the foot does raise what would be the bottom of that curve slightly off the table. And I think that gives them grace and some nice balance.
Nicely done.
I like the bottom view
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah, it really shows there.
All right, Norm.
Oh, this is the last one, I promise. So I haven't had a lot of turning time, but I've got at least enough discipline to finish what I've started before going on. So the last of the cake stands. This one's a little bit larger. It's about 9.5 inches. Again, the pieces separate. And I did learn the lesson on the wider base so that if you actually want to cut the cake, it won't tip over. That's a third piece that's glued on.
Does that go all the way through that extra piece on the base, or is it just kind of set down in it?
It's set down in it and glued.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all ambrosia maple, but that piece had a little different tone to it that didn't come out until I added final sanded it.
Right. Well, I think what's good about it is it's got enough contrast that it doesn't look like it looks like that was the intended effect. If it had been just a subtle difference off, then it would have been. But the fact that it's that different, I think, actually enhances it because it looks like just that was the intention there.
Yeah.
And
Let's put a rim on this one.
Got tired.
Sorry.
It looked like captive rings that got tired.
Yeah. collapsed captive rings.
Yep. Nice base. I like that.
And Norm, what are you finishing this with?
I've been using wipe-on poly since it's going to be, touching food and getting a little bit of abuse.
Yep.
So that one doesn't have a finish on it yet. The others I put wipe-on poly on came out pretty well.
Yeah. Well, that's actually looks good for not having any finish on it. Do you fill in the ambrosia wormholes?
I did. It's unintentional, but I actually did fill the one that's right there at the rim facing. But the others I did not. Because that one was just so big. It was actually a beetle hole, not a beetle, but a powder beetle hole.
Right.
And it was just too big a gap at the rim, and I didn't want. In the case of a cake holder, you don't want to just make it smaller.
Yeah. I worry sometimes with food stuff that something like this, that if you have holes there, that they're going to collect crumbs or food or in there. So
you fill your Steve, and then with what?
Sometimes, and again, it depends on whether it's an art piece or but if it's a functional bowl, I'll usually use CA with sawdust or something, just to fill them in. It depends on. Sometimes if it's big, I'll just put a dab of black CA in there or something. It also makes the vacuum chuck work better. So, but it's something I don't know whether it's necessary. It's just something I thought about as I've, whether they would collect food or not. So.
No, I've wondered the same thing. And the last bowl that I just shipped out to somebody yesterday, I actually filled them with candle wax. because the bowl was waxed anyway, and so I just kind of, just grated a candle across there and jammed it in there, and I guess it'll wash out eventually, but I don't know.
That's something to think about.
The only other thing I had time for was peppermills, so I had these already drilled out. So I just got to turning them. They're a fun little project. If we ever get markets going again, which appears to be the case for the summer, I want to have these on hand because they tend to move pretty well. Caduc up front, and then some of the spectre ply in the back. And the one in the dead middle does have a mated version, but I had a little assembly problem. It got jammed up when I tried to assemble it, so I got to pull it apart and sand it out a little more so it'll fit.
Were you able to?
Are you participating in the Cary Spring Days?
Probably not. Where Steve has lined us up for a couple of food and flea, and there is an event we're going to do in was it April 3rd, Steve?
Right. Mystic Farms Distillery. So yeah, I haven't heard that Spring Days is going to happen yet.
Yeah, it is going to happen, but it's going to be over 4 consecutive weekends.
Oh.
And I think what they're trying to do is just spread it out, and
right.
So there's more space between tents and probably fewer people too.
Well, we will. Maybe I'll look into that. See what there's something we want to do as a club. Norm, I like the. I really like the mirror effect. I mean, it's a very effective photographing these on the mirror for these particular pieces there. I think that works well.
Yeah, it's kind of a way to show the bottom without having a second photograph. So.
Yeah, it's nice.
Thanks. That's all I did. I don't believe Reed is with us tonight. I've been looking for him in the list, and I don't think he came.
All right. All right. Well, we will save those for next month then. All right, Ron Patterson.
Hey, good evening, guys. This is my first attempt at any type of wood with a burl or burl in it. Get up at a sawmill as I was getting some 8-quarter lumber, and really had no plan when I put it on the lathe other than get some bark off and see what was under it. And I left it in the shape that the person who had cut it. So you see kind of a straight edge down there. It was about 2.5 inches thick to begin with, and I ended up putting a bowl in it and curving the sides out. And as I was doing it, it kind of reminded me of actually something that you dig up and rust it all apart in a dump or something like that. So I tried my second attempt at any pyography ever on it. I turned some of those on the outside and did some wood burning on it. It's 10 inches across and about 2 inches deep.
Interesting. Yeah, it's always a challenge when you have that straight edge on there, what to do with it.
Yeah. So again, I wasn't really planning anything with it when I started. It's the first time I've ever turned anything like this
Right.
with it. And wanting to more, see what the grain that would reveal.
No, that's a good attempt to try to salvage it.
I like the pyro work you did on it. Looks great.
The photos are out of sequence, Steve. His second shot on that is 2 photos ahead.
Uh-oh.
Thanks on the photography. Yeah, just that was a little handmade basket weave tip.
Wait, isn't that
just a round tip?
Is that the same one? Wait.
Yeah, it's the same piece.
Okay. All right. What, Ron? I just a suggestion on the photographs. I would get the wood out from under it. I think it's difficult to it's difficult to really. It distracts from the photograph having that piece of wood underneath it. So
yeah, I have to admit I got lazy and forgot that the show and tell was coming up and didn't get the light box and all that out. So just snapped a couple to get a submission in.
All right. Actually,
and this was it's a 12 by inch and 3/4 ash kiln dried blank that I started with, or board that I started with, and was actually trying to use some carbides for first time, and it's got a little bit of an undercut rim to it, and when I was done with the bowl, I hadn't had any intention to do any real biography on it. I did turn those two rim slots in it, and it used Formica countertop to for nose. But when I was all said and done with it, and had first coat of finish on it, noticed some pool marks around where that inner biography is. And this might be my solution to cover that up without having to rework everything. That's what I did.
Nice save.
Thanks.
No, that looks good.
Ron, I'm going to make a quick comment regarding getting the light box out. I used to have that problem too. And then I realized, man, I have a storage space upstairs, which is cold in the winter and hot in the summer. But that's where I built my little photo studio. So I can just leave things up there. I don't have to take it down. Very convenient.
That's a good idea. I got to look for a space for that. I've got a big den up here, but I'll probably carve out a space and just keep it here. Great, thanks.
So what finishes on this, Ron?
That's nothing more than BLO and a Mylan's friction polish over it.
Okay.
Hey, Ron, I have a question about the pyrography. Is that what you call that? That's good. So the edges seem not distinct. Is it possible that you could do that and then do a final sanding on it? Just to get any kind of the sprays cleaned up.
Mark, you mean the edges on the rim? Aren't
well,
crisp,
in all of the places, and especially the piece you showed before that. I was really wondering about that. But so in the center of your piece where it's detailed, so if you sanded it a little bit, wouldn't that just like pop the ash from the black more?
It might. I was trying to get it as filled in as I could, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure it would or could. Yeah, I've never, like I said, this was actually the first time I've ever used a biography tool, and the previous piece was the second time. So.
It's really hard to clean up the edges, so it's a great idea to do, as he says, if not sanding, a final shear scraping cut. Basically, count on going over the edge, and then leave yourself enough wood so you can do a shear scrape and take everything off that dirtied surface.
Yeah.
Then you end up with a nice clean inner edge.
Okay, great. Thanks for the advice.
And you find the ash is one of the more difficult woods to do that on because it has such wide growth rings on it, and the difference in hardness between the heart and sapwood on the growth rings. You'll see that where you tried to burn the rim on with the Formica, it tends to creep out into. And I think what you may find a better way to do that would be to actually cut those grooves with a point tool, and then just use the Formica to just burn it. But if you're trying to actually make the groove with the Formica and burn it in, it's going to wander on you
I should actually say the outer those rings were I used the point of a parting tool, and then when I did the Formica, the lines were a lot cleaner, but it almost looked, it was very much contrasting with the kind of roughness of the inner burning. So I went back and just used a pyrography tool over, and that's what caused some of that additional edge burning.
Right.
My attempt to balance out the two. The rim lines were originally very, very crisp with the point tool and a Formica.
It's certainly a aesthetically pleasing piece, and it looks like it's well turned. So nice and done.
I'm learning every week.
Well, good. Well, that's.
Do you have trouble with the burning tool? Because I had a lot of trouble with it for a while, until I realized that a trick from what do you call it, artists, is to plant a finger down, like shooting pool. If you can land your pinky,
Yeah.
then you're not holding that tool in midair. You're pivoting off of another finger, and you can be much more steady with it.
Yeah, I will try that because Norm, throughout the thing, I was constantly moving my hands, trying to get comfortable, figure out to hold it and all that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I used to shoot a lot of pools, so I never thought of using the base to do that.
One other thing, Ron, on that is when you're burning with pyrography, start out with a lower temperature, colder than what you think it's going to take, and start working with that and work your temperature up. Because if you go too hot, it starts burning everything, and it goes over your lines very easily then, because you're burning, especially when you go from a hard grain to a soft grain, you're burning right through it.
And that's what was happening here, because I don't know if it was Stephen mentioned or somebody on this ash, across the span of that little basket weave tip, as you cut different areas of the grain or was burning at different paces like crazy.
Yeah.
Hard to control.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I just got a weird idea. What if you took the pyrography tool took the bowl and mounted it to your lathe, vacuum or whatever, and then used something to clamp the pyrography tool right at that groove and rotated it slowly on the lathe? I think you get a very stable burn into that groove. Just a wild guess. I mean, if I were screwing around with it.
Never tried that, Alan. The one thing I noticed that I hadn't, again, just starting this, is after every little bit that you do, there's a residue that builds up on the tip.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to kind of sand and wet sponge that off to get it back. It's like a residue that builds up on it. So I don't know how that would work on a lathe.
I think that would tear the tip right off the tool.
No, not at speed. I mean, just the kind of rotate.
I think, it just, you can't put any, I don't think that those tips don't take any kind of lateral pressure. They're really meant to be forced down. So
it's like 19 gauge wire or something is what I use.
Yeah, but if it's running hot enough and it just touches it gently, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, it does.
For the
This is Jim Krager on the pyrography. When he was saying about cleaning his tip, I went to a pyrography class and she suggested using denim. She just used a little scrap of denim to clean the tip, not to sand it.
Was it dry or wet or just?
Yeah, it was dry. It wasn't. Okay. I mean, you don't leave it on there long unless you're running your hit tip so hot. It wouldn't bother. You just drag it fast across the denim.
Yeah, I used it with soldering iron too.
Denim's got enough, it's got enough texture to it that it cleans it right off.
Okay, great.
Just a hint.
I use a refined brass brush, and I find that works pretty well too.
from my days in stained glass, it also works well to use just a pad of all 4/0 steel wool, as long as you're very soft with it.
And if all else fails, you give it to Alan Falk and he'll do it on the moon.
All right, well, thank you guys.
It fits my lathe. I'm going to try it myself, let you know.
All right, Greg, and Greg, so I got your email. I actually had a power failure at my house this afternoon, so I have this picture, and then I have the two of the Decos one, I think. So that's what I could get in, and then my power went out, and it came back at 2 minutes to 6. So
all right. Well, that's all we need. So tonight I have a couple of different stools of the two primary different bar stool, turning techniques. I am glad to see that Alan Leland joined us tonight, because I think of this as the Alan Leland stool. This one from a class Alan taught at the Craft Center. This is ambrosia maple and walnut. Alan has some very nice plywood profiles for choosing your leg style. There are an awful lot of turned leg styles, Federalist and Victorian, that I do not like. So this one that Alan had, I do like, and I made the stretchers of my own design. So, nice composition, but the construction is the part that fascinated me. That Alan has this technique that once you get the legs in there, and you pull them tight as far apart as they'd go. I'd say, Alan, 35, 40 pounds pressure, and then you measure the distance between the legs, and at that point you turn the stretchers to that length, and that helps assure that the stretchers glued into the legs will stay tight. Any other questions? We can move on to the next stool. Okay, this is Honduras mahogany and red oak in an Art Deco style. Oh, I think this is the Deco Stool 1, which isn't quite as nice as Deco Stool 2, but still shows you the concept. And the difference in construction is this one has 7 wedged mortise and tenons, 3 in the top and 4 in the bottom, which clearly make them the stool stronger. But having gone through the process several times, I have my doubts, and my conclusion is, wedged mortise and tenons through the top of the stool are, well, they look nice, but structurally I don't think are necessary. The forces of a heavy person such as myself sitting on this stool is not going to push those put stress on the top tenons. The stresses are down at the stretcher level, and that's where and this stool has wedge mortise and tenon on all the stretchers, and that's where I think it would be useful to have the mortise and tenon. Okay, so a detail on that, and this is also stool 1. I got better with the second stool here, but you see the unusual detail. This is to match the we maintain an Art Deco motif in our kitchen. I have the original Sears Home Art white porcelain enamel base cabinets and other deco fixtures, and this mimics the light fixture overhead. But when I got on to Deco Stool 2, I cleaned up particularly the wedged mortise tenon there. The wedge is a little bit thin. It's not exactly perpendicular to the grain of the woods. And one other thing I changed the next time around is the wedge here was in walnut, which I thought was nice, but it's not very distinct. So the next stool I made, the wedge was of ebony, and it makes it, and I did a thicker wedge, and it was more distinct.
Nicely done, Greg. That's really. Anytime I look at a piece that has multiples of the same piece that all have to look approximately the same, I just I'm always amazed because it's not something I can do.
If we had the photos for stool number 2, things I improve. Well, one, the finish on the seat top looks kind of muddy here. I think what I improved on is generally anything comes out of my shop with red oak gets a coat of amber shellac, and there's probably amber shellac on the mahogany, but usually I wait a month or so and say it doesn't look smooth and shiny enough, and I spray it with lacquer. So that would be on the other photograph. So Okay, I think that's it.
No,
Good job,
both-
Greg.
both of them.
I'm glad you took my class. It looks like
Yes,
you've done
it,
well.
it was very good. And Alan, you've done the best job of teaching me how to make beads. And Alan was apologizing all the time. I mean, he did this in 5 minutes, how to make beads with a gouge, but I applied it here and it worked pretty well.
Nicely done. All right, Ted, let me see if I can blow this up some.
Oh, my cryptex. So, yeah, so I made this for my son for his birthday because he loves puzzles. And so I saw these and decided to make one. It takes quite a bit of effort, at least for me, to do it, to get it made. And then I had to figure out how to get the, I show it here with the key, you know, the right keys. But of course, it's got 5 different wheels on it and a bunch of different levers. And if you just spin them, of course, it's just a bunch of mixed up mess on there on it. And but when you get the combination right, that Steve was showing the previous photo, then the box unlocks and you can pull out the inner sleeve and can have a little prize in there or whatever you want to store. And I've forgotten now, but it's quite a different number of combinations that you can have with just 5 different wheels on there. And there's 12 letters all around it. So it's really fun to make. And I made one mistake. Well, I probably made more than one mistake, but I made one mistake in it for sure was on the H wheel there, the one the farthest to the left that you see up at the top. And you can see the little home that I put on there, meaning that's a home where you line up everything. There was a little indentation on that wheel, and it was kind of easy to tell that was the right wheel to start with, you know, for the combination. And so then, you know, he was able to figure out the rest of it. But there's 12 actual words on there that all relate to him, and he's only solved this one relays 4 different things, which is happy birthday, Alex Ross, 2021. And that's an exclamation point, kind of hard to see in the photo there at the end of it. But he got it. And I was expecting him to take a couple of days, but he got it open in about 20 minutes. So I was shocked, but like I said, he's been working on it ever since, trying to figure out the other words, and he hasn't gotten them yet. So
my mathematician brain told me there are 248,832 possible combinations.
Well, I know it's quite a few, and that sounds probably right, Bob, what you're saying. I don't know how many there is, but there's quite a few combinations, and it was really fun, and I'm going to make some more of them. It took me probably 8 hours to make this thing, just to make it. I mean, I did probably, I don't know, a lot of thinking before I did it. So it takes a while. It took me a while to make this one, but I've documented some of it, and I'm gonna do a few more of them when I get a chance and get a little bit better at them. Hope I can make it in maybe 2 to 4 hours, something like that. Make one. And it does take quite a bit of wood because you have to cut all the rings off of one chunk of wood. Then you got to cut the outer tube off another chunk of wood, and either as a piece of each end of it, the outer tubes, or else have the tube, create the tube out of something else and glue it into the end pieces. I made them all out of the tubes and the end handles, essentially all out of one piece. I just thought it looked better that way, to do it that way. So it does take a little bit of wood to actually make it together, because you got a lot of waste in it. You're cutting out the core of each one of those 3 pieces to get it done. But it was really fun, and he loved it. You know, everybody that looks at it just loves it. So it was fun.
Good. That's interesting. Be a great demo sometime if you ever get it down lower than done.
Yeah. Well, I think
in 8 hours.
Yeah. Well, if I get it down, I can do a video probably in 20, 30 minutes, something like that type of thing, you know, because you wouldn't show cutting everything up, you know. Just
Your wood, I assume your wood was bone dry, wasn't it, Ted?
Yeah, it was a piece of sweet gum actually that I had probably for 3 years sitting on the shelf, something like that. So yeah. And it actually has moved a little bit since then, since I made it. Because I noticed that, I don't know if you can see this, but I noticed that it's a little sticky going in and out right now on it. So, but a little bit of sanding on it would loosen it back up again, no problem. But maybe the next time I need to have just a little bit more slop in it, in the tube.
That's fun. That's a fun thing. I'm sure he got a kick out of it.
Yeah, he loves it.
Very clever.
Yeah, and this one, I'm sharing this one because it's a piece of redbud, and there was a tree in front of our house, and there was a big oak that went down across the street, and the power company came out and they decided they were going to cut this redbud, the top of it off, so that they could drop a wire to get the red oak out. And so anyways, I thought, well, I never turned that. I'll take a try at that. And man, I'll tell you, I love it. Working with this wood is just fantastic. And when I got done, I should have included another photo of it when I first turned it, because what happened is the whole coloring of it changed as it dried, and it ended up looking like this in the end. And it is even better. I thought it was great when I first turned it, but it turned out even better afterwards, where you can see all these grain patterns very strong, and it's a really excellent piece.
I've done a bunch of things with red bud, and you get just gorgeous patterns in the green.
Yeah, this is the first piece that I've done with it, and I'm going to get all of it I can now. I really like working with it.
Was it wet when you turned it, Ted?
Sorry?
Was it wet when you turned it?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, really wet. Yep.
Was that turned with the pith in the center, or?
Yeah, that's a branch, and so the pith, you can't see it there, but the pith is in the bottom of it. I can show it. I don't know if you can see that or not, but
Very interesting wood.
yeah, the pith is still in there, and I didn't get any cracks. I mean, there's not a single crack in it. It just came out great. I did another one this weekend that's a little bit bigger type thing, and I've got a couple more chunks of it out there yet, so I'll make a couple more pieces before I'm done.
What's the height of this?
It's about 10 inches high and probably about 3.5 inches big around. Yeah, 3.5 by 9. 3.5 by 9.
And did you hollow it, or did you just drill it?
Yeah, it's hollowed out. And the one I just did, I hollowed it out, and I put it in. I hollowed it out in steps, so that you can put a glass liner in it, and when it sits down into the bottom, it seats itself, into the step at the bottom. But the sidewalls then are about 1/4 of an inch thick, so that it's, I was worried about leaving it too thick, and then with the wet, it may crack on me, so I thinned it out and then stepped it down at the bottom so that the liner falls into it then. It's a little bit bigger round than this one is. The top of this one's only a couple inches bigger round. About 2 inches bigger round, and the inside is about 1 3/8 hollow.
Yeah, that's nicely done. It is a very pretty piece of wood.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous piece.
Yeah. Nicely done.
Thank you.
All right, Stefan.
Yes, so this is Willow Oak, and I really show this to ask the question. So this is a vessel that's about maybe 6 inches tall and 4 inches wide, and it's fairly thin, and several of them have cracked at the rim, as you see here. Currently, I've filled it with rose dust wood with CA glue. Well, this one I have not, but the other one I have. My question to you all is, any suggestions, number one, how to prevent this?
Well, I'll just jump in on that, Stefan. I've done quite a bit with red oak. I know a lot of people hate it, but I love it if you can get it to turn out right. But when you have the sapwood on it, like what's happening to you, especially thin, is that's drying out so much faster than the heartwood is. And so on those pieces, you got to seal that completely, that sapwood, you know, with like a anchor seal type sealer or something to so that to prevent it. And the problem with doing that is getting it back off there to put the finish on later if you're doing like a hollow form like this where you don't plan on turning it twice. So that's the issue that I find all the time is that if you put a sealer like that on there, then you know, how do you get it back off later, right after it dries out?
So Stefan, so how did you finish this, or did you?
No, at this point, it's not finished. And I don't understand, Ted, why it would crack, because cracking is typically when it dries in one area quicker than the other. But this one here just cracks where the sapwood is at the rim, not
Because it's because it's at the rim. It doesn't have any more strength, any reinforcement above it, and that's where you have it the thinnest. I think Ted is absolutely right. That's why it's cracking there. But so in terms of finishing, one of the things, I haven't had anything crack that I've been turning like that. So my process is after it's sanded, then it gets finished with walnut oil. And I think that the walnut oil in the wood slows the drying down by a lot. But on some things like this with oak, sometimes you take even some craft paper and make a little gasket so that just that top part is covered up and leave it that way for a while. Best thing to, as far as handling oak and not having it crack is dry it slowly, a lot more slowly than other woods. It doesn't take quick moving.
And then Mark, you seem to indicate you put the walnut oil on when it's dry, when it's wet still.
Yeah, as soon as I can sand it and I'm happy with it, then the walnut oil goes on then, and
So-
as much as it'll handle.
Physiologically, the cracking at the rim surprised me because I thought the rim would just distort and would shrink and it wouldn't crack, but the wood would be able to move because it's so thin. But
Well, the other thing you have working against you here is that, you know, the rim is coming up on this piece, at least it's coming up vertical. And so if it had continued up on the curve, maybe it may not have cracked, but with that abrupt change in direction there, you're forcing it into a movement that it's not supported anywhere else. So that could also be part of it. But it is at the top. And so you have geometry working against you. You have the sapwood working against you.
And then let me ask you, Ted, you say you raise a question, how do you get off the anchor seal? So how do you?
Well, you know, you have to sand it off, you know, because you can't return it because you're getting so much warpage on it. You can't return it. So you end up, you know, if you put it on there, you got to sand it off. What Mark was saying also, which I've tried before too, and sometimes with success, is I take a plastic wrap and wrap around that top area essentially so that it can't breathe at all. You know, it's plastic on there. And it has to breathe out through the other wood at the bottom, which dries slowly, you know, or sometimes I wrap the whole thing maybe, you know, except for the base or something, you know, and, or maybe a small hole in the top of it in the plastic. So it has a little bit of air movement, but not much, because you got to really slow it down. And then one thing also, I watched a video, Steve actually told me about this woman. Her name, I think, is Siri Robinson. She's from Oregon State, and she is an expert on drying woods and fungus in woods and stuff. And she has a video out there that talks about this. And she says that what happens in these cases is that the wood on the sapwood or the wood on the edge dries fast, And so it starts to contract, but then the moisture from below that comes out and it resaturates the wood again. So it makes it turn back the other way. And that sometimes causes the cracking. So it's very, you know, so you might look her up, you know, you can watch that video and it's really good, I thought, her video.
And then Steve, if I may quickly ask this, then my plan here was, because I don't like the cracks, I would like to make the rim black so that there's a 0.5 centimeter of blackness at the top, and that would hide the crack. But how do I make such black rim? By either pyrography or by paint, so that it's a clear, very straight line against the body of this vessel, and that it's not by hand kind of jiggly.
Well, Bob Edmondson had some great ebonizing solution and combined with pyrography in his piece. You might be able to do something like that.
Yeah, and there's a relatively new product out of England. I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's a liquid. What's the word that you just said, Steve?
Ebonizing.
Yeah, ebonizing. I think it's a 2-step process, and maybe you could put a little a groove where you wanted it to stop, and it wouldn't go past that. I haven't seen anything where you tried to stop it at a certain place. They usually just do the whole piece.
Stefan, that's already warped enough that you can't recut a ring on it now, right?
Correct. You cannot.
Yeah. Maybe you can you wrap a piece of tape around it, you know, straight enough, or no?
But, you know, you can't guarantee the dye, whatever you're using, is going to go under the tape, won't go under the tape.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's just toast. You have, you know, you're done. I think it's pretty risky at this point. But, you know, a lot of folks like to use India ink. They say that really penetrates the wood well, and it's color fast. It's not going anywhere. That's easy to come by.
Well, the other thing is, instead of trying to get a hard line, I mean, maybe endorse the you know, do a wave pattern or something like that in there, where if you get some undulations in it, it looks like it's part of the process. Not if you're striving for a hard edge, any imperfection is going to show. But you could do, if you did some kind of pattern on there, you could do it with a pyrography pen, and a lot of times when I get texture with the pyrography, I just come back with a black magic marker later on and fill in any areas that aren't burned enough. But you know, think about just doing some kind of form on there rather than a hard line. That may give you a better result.
Exactly. I was picturing an undulating type of rim, and you could put the bottoms of the undulations right where those cracks are.
You have to be careful too with the how thin this piece is, because with that oak, you're going to get a lot of capillary motion from the outside in, and it could go right through onto the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something to look forward to. One of our presenters, Greg, does a lot of coloring on his pieces, and there has nice crisp lines. So that's something to look forward to there.
Yeah. I was going to mention that Greg Galagos, who's coming up in June. He's not going to do that, but if you go look out on his Instagram, you can see a lot of his stuff. And what he does, Stefan, is he paints it black all the way down to the heartwood. So he follows kind of like the ring. So it's not straight. He just follows it with his brush, and he uses acrylic paint, and he paints it. It looks really good.
I've seen those. They look terrific.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could use the technique that potters use, where you could turn it upside down and dip it into India ink or acrylic.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. Depends on how much the colorant would soak into the wood and, you know, bleed in. But if it didn't bleed much, or, you know, had a pretty high viscosity, that's turn it upside down and put it in the dish. Yeah.
Well, yeah, just dip it and don't turn it until it dries. Don't turn it back right side up again.
Yep.
Maybe if you use something that was more like a gesso on it first to kind of seal it up a little bit, give it some tooth, you might be able to put use acrylics on it a lot more successfully.
All right. Well,
Thank you, everybody.
All these ideas, Stefan, you got something to work with now.
All right, I will.
All right. This is mine. So I've been working with this artist in Cary, creating a variety of turned forms for him that he incorporates into his sculptures. And I've made actually, this is probably the 10th spheres I've made, but he came to me and said, do you think I could get one that was 11 and a half inches, and later changed it to 11 and a quarter. He wanted it. His first thought was a solid piece of wood. And I told him that I didn't think a 12 by 12 by 12 cube would hold up very well for him. So we ended up using kiln dried cherry, which we planed. It started out as 8/4, and then we planed it down to get it flat. And then I did a glue up on it, and I'll show you some pictures of the glue up later on. But just to highlight here that he was very specific about the grain pattern he wanted. He wanted the grain to match as well as it could going around. So you can see that. So it kind of dictated how it was glued up. But so there's eight total pieces on that are glued together. And I have a couple pictures of the glue up that are following this. And then these are just some. This is a maple sphere. That's about that's 3 inches. This is 2.5. That's ebony, and this is rosewood. This is the size of a golf ball. The maple sphere had to be in 2 pieces, so he could cut it. He could break it apart and stick it inside a sculpture, and then join it back together. So it's got a dowel in the middle of it, and then I used the brown paper to and glue, and then turned it, and then just busted that apart with a chisel with a thin putty knife. And then you can see that you can't, the joint is there, but it's very difficult to see. I mean, it comes together very well, and it's not glued at that point. It's just stuck together on the dowel. So, and I think I mentioned this in one of our, the way I turn these is I use the octagon method to get them close to a sphere, and then, but his tolerance are plus or minus a 1/16. And so I actually use the Carter sphere jig to get them, the final pass on those, to get them right at his requested dimension. So, and this is the glue up of that, of the big one. And you can see I had to, in order to get that grain to match, and also to use the wood, he brought me a 7-foot piece of lumber. And when I finished, I had to do these steps on it in order to, I had 3/4 of an inch left over when I finished doing this. So I used every bit of what he brought. So, and you can see that sphere, there's not a lot of extra there. It had to be done very carefully. And then the picture on the right is just, it's sitting on my lathe, just to give you a size of a view perspective. So, so that's been fun.
An amazing project.
Yeah, and I would say that right now there's no finish on any of these. Those are just sanded.
Just gorgeous.
Major wow factor there. Just major wow. Beautiful.
I have to say, when I turned this, the big one, I had it. I actually had a roll of masking tape, and I put this on my kitchen counter because I took the first picture of it, and I actually left it there a week, and it was just fun to just have it there, because the temptation is to just, every time you walk by, you just want to rub it. It was just fun. So, anyway.
Using individual pieces glued up as opposed to one larger piece is what?
It's a lot more stable. A piece that big with, first of all, trying to get a piece that's 12 inches cube that doesn't have pith in it would be very difficult. And if you put the pith in it, then it's definitely going to crack on you. So yeah, you'd probably need a 30 to probably even more, probably a 36-inch piece of wood in order to get a 12-inch piece that didn't contain any pith. So, but yeah, the glue up is going to be far more stable than and plus this is kiln dried, so it shouldn't move. It should be pretty stable. I say it shouldn't move. I will tell you that what I found was that these things were perfectly round, particularly the big one was perfectly round when I turned it, and when he came and picked it up, there was still a little bit. If you rolled it, I mean, you couldn't tell looking at it, but if you rolled it across the table, across the bench, you could tell it just had a little bit of eccentricity to it, just due to the difference in the difference in movement between the side grain and the end grain. So, but it's not. I'm pretty confident this isn't going to crack the way a solid piece of wood would.
Stephen, how did you turn the ends?
So I turned it again using the kind of the octagon method. Then I put the Carter jig on it, and I had glue box on the sides of it that you can see to hold it there because I didn't have any extra width, so I had to use. But then I used one of my PVC vacuum chucks. I didn't use it as a vacuum chuck, but I just used it as a cup holder. And I have spherical cup holders that I use for turning the smalls, but I just turned it 90 degrees. And I took one of the PVC vacuum chucks and I just turned the edge of that so it kind of mimicked the edge, the circumference of the sphere. And I put that on the headstock, and I just used a golf ball with a little piece of foam on it on the tailstock to press it into that. And then I just turned the ends off it. It was about, on the big one, there's about a 3/4 inch nub sitting on each end. And it was so well centered on that vacuum. The vacuum chuck worked so well because it was, I think it was about 4.5 inches. So it had a pretty good bite on it. And I just turned that nub off each end with it turned 90 degrees and then just sanded it.
Yeah.
Do you know what his ultimate intended use is for his project?
Yeah, his name is Jeff Dale, and Dale Designs, and you can go on his website, or you can find him on Instagram. He's been posting pictures of those various pieces, and you can see a lot of the recent ones actually. Some have the spheres in them, but yeah, it's kind of a metal. Well, it uses a lot of different materials, but it's a modernistic metal sculpture that's mainly rectilinear, and then the sphere kind of offsets the hard angles on it. So, and the last thing I have is I just some of you have already seen this, but this is I had a chance to get a bunch of wood last week, and I resurrected my truck crane, and I'd had this on a former truck. This is a Harbor Freight crane that's meant for to be mounted on the bed of a truck permanently, and it doesn't have a winch on it. It just lifts up with the hydraulics. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, I just outfitted this so it fits in the receiver of my truck, and put a it's actually a boat trailer winch on here with a handle on it so it can pull up the cable on it. But that, I estimated just by the volume of that piece of wood there, it's 36 inches long and almost 30 inches in diameter. I estimated it weighed between 330 and 350 pounds. So just picked it up, and it still struggles to pick it up, but it just rotates it onto the tailgate, and I just slide it in. And there's just another picture of it, holding the wood. And then this is just a close-up of how I fit it into my trailer hitch. So it's funny. I posted this on Facebook on the Woodturners group, and people are telling me I should manufacture it. It's like, no, there's not a chance in the world I'd put that out on the market. But
so Steve, did you ever mount
He's a good
this
lawyer.
in the bed of your truck?
Did I what?
Did you ever have this mounted in the bed of your truck as it was intended?
No, I didn't want to. First of all, I didn't want that post. I didn't want to drill holes in the bed of my truck. So I wanted something I could take off, and and just use it. It probably will work fine mounted in the bed of the truck. But being limited by the hydraulics to lift on this thing, that wouldn't have worked for what I wanted anyway. So so by having the winch on it, I've actually used it to drag logs towards the truck. When I've had them in the woods, I just lower that boom all the way down, and I use the winch to I've had some pieces that didn't want to roll, and I just drag them. But and then to hoist them, I drill a hole in the right at the pith, and I put in a 6-inch by 1/2 inch forged lag bolt in it. And some people have told me that that's not a good way to do it, but I don't stand anywhere near it when I'm picking it up, and I've never had one of those bolts come out. I trust that bolt more than I would a strap. I used to try to put straps around it, but they were always slipping. So anyway, let's just.
I wouldn't get underneath it, but otherwise, I think it looks fine.
Yeah, no, it works. And I originally tried this without the outriggers, just by putting it into the receiver of my truck, but there was so much torque on it, it just bent it. So those are 2 boat trailer winches. Again, I picked up from Harbor Freight, and I just put them on there. So
I don't think you need to make them and sell them, but if you just sell the design for that, you could probably get $50 a page.
Not interested. Just not.
Your call.
I don't want the liability. So anyway.
What kind of wood are you picking up there, Steve?
It's maple.
Oh, maple.
Yep. So and some of those pieces will be at the wood sale, or I've cut it up and processed it, wax sealed it. So some of that will be at the wood sale. So
very nice.
All right. So that's
your forklift, right?
No, they're all cut up, so you don't have to worry about it. I've been chainsawing for the last 2 weeks, and most of it's going, well, a lot of it's going to the wood sale. So all right, that's the end of the show and tell.